Okay, it's September 21st, 2010. I'm in Lynchburg, Virginia. I'm Matt Komoroski. I'm interviewing Mary Komoroski here at Westminster, Canterbury. And we're rolling. So, what's your fondest memory?
Oh, I have no idea. Probably being in the Sistine Chapel with you in the wheelchair, and I had 30 minutes in the Sistine Chapel just to look at everything. And it was just fabulous. That's what jumped into mind when you asked, when you said that.
Okay.
And before, while you were getting ready, I was thinking about buying Cokes for a nickel when I was a kid in a machine. And they came in glass bottles, and they were 6 ounces. And of course, you turned in your bottle. And how much things have changed. I mean, you can't buy a 6-ounce drink anymore.
No. Everything's supersized.
Everything
now.
has supersized since those days. And gotten more expensive.
I found it interesting when Starbucks came out with their bottled coffees. Some of them were kind of small again, and they were again going for that. We'll make it small and we'll make it expensive, and that'll make it special kind of feeling that Coca-Cola used to go for with those small bottles. But you're right. Very few of them are trying that anymore.
Right, no, but I mean, the portions of everything everywhere were smaller.
Yeah.
It was just what people thought of. I mean, that's one of the biggest changes I've seen.
When this is all done, there won't be any silences in it, but for now, it doesn't matter.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
Yeah, I mean, it's
We
nothing.
can have a pause.
Yeah, don't feel like you have to fill up the time with talk.
Okay. What did you have in mind when you set this up? When we were first talking about it?
I didn't have any particular preconceived idea of what you would say.
Oh, okay, because I thought you had said something about family stories or...
Well, you might want to tell family stories. You've told me family stories before. You might not want to tell family stories. You might want to tell family stories some other time. There can always be some other time, too.
Well, that's a good thing.
You know, it's kind of up to you. I want a recording of whatever you wanted to say.
Oh, gee, I should have thought about it.
Well, if you had, it would sound kind of different. It would sound like you had, you know, like, well, I've taken some notes here and I've got some.
No, we don't want that. We don't want that.
I mean, some people, that would be what they did. That would be them, and that would be the appropriate thing to have on tape for them.
Right, right. Well, I guess my passion has always been to do better, to improve, self-improvement of some sort,
Okay.
to become wiser.
And wisdom is something you don't hear much about anymore, too.
No, but I have a very high value on it. That's why I majored in philosophy, in part.
How do you define wisdom?
It's a deep kind of understanding. It's not an understanding of something small. It's an understanding of something more macro understanding, let's say, instead of micro. I've never thought that before, but that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I've been trying to define wisdom a long time.
I've heard it said that true wisdom always has an emotional component, and I think that's probably true.
I've also heard it generalized that the wiser view takes a broader view. looks at whatever it's looking at in the context of more time and more of its connections with other things. I mean, that doesn't really just define wisdom as it defines wiser than the other thing.
Right.
But it's a helpful thing for the, and the fact that, you know, in most of my lifetime, the word wisdom is often used almost scoffingly. It's not something people take seriously.
Right. Well, there is an anti-intellectualism in our society
Yeah.
that's pervasive.
Yes. But there's even a tolerance of intellectuals if they know how to make the machines work, whereas humanitarian types who are all full of wisdom are just, what the hell, just a waste of everybody's time. You know?
Right, yeah, if you're an engineer or something, that's fine. I don't think of them as intellectuals, but...
Yeah, well, you're right, that's definitely an anti-intellectual bias.
Right, but they're certainly very good at making things work.
But even intellectuals, especially like postmodern intellectuals, don't want to hear about wisdom. That's, you know,
No, they
you
don't.
cannot quantify that.
No, that's old stuff. That's back in the modern era. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is okay. Wisdom will come back, I think. I predict that wisdom will come back.
Well, they're re-releasing the Preppy Handbook.
Whatever that means.
Or they've updated it. Well, there's some talk that that fashions for the last 20 years have gotten so slutty, was the word that they used, that a more conservative sort of preppy look in fashion is due for a comeback. Some people are saying
Classic.
Yeah. And the person made references to Ralph Lauren and people like that. And all I could think of was somebody I read quoted that Ralph Lauren's main accomplishment was creating the myth of a well-dressed American upper class.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
But most of my clothes are what you call classics. I don't go with the fashion trends.
Yeah, me neither. You know, exclusively at Target. Oh, heavens.
Yeah, no, I like colors.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the main thing when I'm looking at clothes. Of course, I get these magazines that are all classic clothes. There's nothing fashionable in there.
Right. There's
They're all
couture.
aimed at people like me. So,
Well, it's where the money is, isn't it?
well, and I mean, I don't know. If I lost a whole lot of weight, it might be different, but I know it's comfortable, and I tend to be a comfort person more than an appearance person.
Yeah, I notice an interesting blend of comfort and appearance around here at Westminster, Canterbury. There are some people who it seems important to them to dress with a certain level of formality, but they will still make some allowances for comfort. And there are other people that appear to be dressing as comfortably as they can get away with.
Right. And to some extent that's generational.
Generational.
Right. The older people tend to be very well dressed. And as the younger people have moved in, I mean, the first crowd who lived here when it started 30 years ago, they all dressed to the nines.
They were at church all the time, huh?
And as time has gone on, as newer people have come in, they've been more relaxed. In general, although there's some new ones who dress to the nines, and some people who've been here for a long time are very relaxed.
You're one of the newer people and younger people here. Huh?
I'm one of the youngest here, yes.
Does that ever bother you?
Sure. I think, well, there was a woman next door here whose name was Clarabelle. And I couldn't believe that she used her middle name. I mean, who would want people to call you Clarabelle?
A southerner.
And, but we were talking about it at Bridge one day, and she said everybody thinks I'm Clarabelle the cow. And then somebody said there was a children's TV show my kids used to watch. And I said, Howdy Doody, I used to watch it. But there's that generation.
Ah, I see.
Because to me, Howdy Doody was what I did.
Right.
And to them, it was what their kids did.
Right. Well, that would.
So there are certain kinds of things that you have in common with people who are your peers.
Right.
Certainly having to do with media and stuff. So, because like my Clarabelle was a clown who was mute.
But did you find it easier to connect with a peer group when you lived in the town of Amherst?
I'm not really an easy person. I don't find making friends easily.
So no.
So I don't really know what to say. People here are very friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody speaks to everybody, and there are a number of people I've had some conversation with. But I haven't really made a friend in the sense of, I mean, I'm one of those people, if I have one really good friend, I'm pretty satisfied. And in that sense, I don't have a friend here. But I have some people I like and people I respect.
Well, maybe it will grow into friendship as you know.
It may well. It may well. And as I'm changing, it may be that I wasn't ready to be friends with whoever my friend's going to be.
That's possible.
And I may have a number of friends here eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And so I still have my own friends.
Good. How's Dina doing?
She's doing well. She's expecting her third grandchild from Amy. And she's retired as a teacher, but she's going back 3 days a week for now. But they've promised her it was only for September because they thought they'd get some new federal money by October to hire someone full-time, because hers is just part-time. Because she's going to Utah and hiking in Utah in October. And the plan was for she and Amy to do it. But since Amy's had all her other babies early, there's some concern that that might not be the good time to fly to Utah and go hiking. So I don't know what's been decided on that one. But she has a friend out there, and she's been there before, and she just loves the scenery.
Oh,
It's just awesome.
I have a similar draw to Colorado that way.
Yeah, and she's the senior warden at Ascension, and she's getting us all straightened out between she and Kathy. We're
I'll bet.
getting everything down. They keep trying to organize me and not being very successful, but otherwise they're doing a grand job. And
there was a Garrison Keillor bit that was about I think it was about an Episcopal church, where he said they're finally getting things together over at the such and such church. Da 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 da. Sometimes some people just have to die before things can move forward. And I thought of
that's been somewhat true. Yeah.
There's another Episcopal, that every Episcopal church is split between two parties. The women who are over 65 and the women who are under 65.
Well, we've got a lot of us there who are right on the cusp.
I think there's some truth in the observation, even though they're not
Right. And then there are those who are older than we are.
Right.
That where there really is kind of a generation gap of sorts. And although, see, I'm finding here that I have a lot in common with people in that age group, and it's helped me be more closer to the people at church. We had these little dinners instead of a stewardship campaign, and we didn't ask for money. We just talked about, well, what's important to you,
Mm-hmm.
and when has it felt good to you to be a member here, and that kind of thing. And I had the one with I was the leader of the one that was sort of the older group, and I did very well. It went very well.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Yeah, yeah. Some older people are some very nice people.
Yeah, and Ben Smith and I have always had an interesting relationship.
Yeah, he always seemed all right to me. Mm-hmm.
He told me how scared he was when he was senior warden and we were all at St. Mark's.
I bet.
And I said, well, I remember you asked me what I thought about something, and I just couldn't believe that you cared what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And, we were able to reminisce like that, and that was really nice. And he remembered when you led the cross at Bishop Light's consecration.
Mm-hmm. It was a special time for me, too.
Yeah, so, that was kind of nice. Yeah, he and I had a problem. There was a time when there was an anti-charismatic backlash, and he was very much a part of that. And he said some very unkind things about people who prayed in tongues and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all over who were we going to call as a minister.
This is before you got George.
No, this is after George.
After George, okay. Before Randall?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we settled on what we were going to... Well, we had somebody that we liked, and some other people didn't. But he said he wouldn't come unless it was unanimous, and it was not. So then we had to start a whole new search committee. And so Ben stopped going to church. He'd been on the vestry and fought the good fight. He got off vestry, and he stopped coming.
Yeah.
For months. So I wrote him a letter. And I told him I disagreed with him about a whole lot of things. But that I really care about him and I missed him. And to please come back to church. And 2 weeks later he did. And every time he sees me he blushes.
Oh, good.
So that's really sort of the story behind our relationship.
Well, good.
So it was one of the right things I did.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, what else have I done? I started coffee hour, weekly coffee hour at Ascension. It was almost once a month and very fancy before me.
Mm-hmm.
And I started the free dinners.
Yeah.
And so those are things I'm proud of that I've done in my life.
That was an idea I might have suggested too.
You might have.
And I felt really special to suggest something and see it actually happen.
Yeah. I had read this thing on spiritual warfare that if everybody's got this attitude or spirit, whatever you want to call it, that's not good, one of the things you can do is do something that's completely the opposite, almost a caricature of the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all, oh, we're so small, we're so poor, we're so poor, we're so small. And so the idea of giving a free dinner to the community was exactly the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And it was wonderful. It worked. And then it caught on, and we do it every month.
I think that's great.
Between the churches and neighbors. So that's something to feel really... We fed 100 people last month.
It's funny. I grew up in the Episcopal Church, and I went to an Episcopal high school and took the required courses and took it fairly seriously and read my Bible and all that stuff. but it was never really explained how the roots of the Episcopal Church come from the English Civil War, and how it was the Anglican Communion was never really designed to please everybody. It was designed to be something that everybody could get together and compromise on, even though they violently disagreed about, with Quakers on the one side and Catholics on the other, and they'd been killing each other for a generation, and that both sides had committed massive atrocities over this, and they really were over that and really wanted it to stop. And so they came up with this church that nobody liked, but that everybody could live with, because it was a compromise where they could stop killing each other over it. And I think that's the strength and the weakness of the Episcopal Church now, that if you're forced to go to a national church, it's probably the best one because it gives you the most freedom of conscience.
I think it does. And a lot of churches kicked out all their charismatics, but the Episcopal Church didn't.
Right. And I think
we've always had oddballs,
If somebody would start preaching sermons to the effect that that's the genius, that this fact that we have these factionalizations and partisanship within the congregation is right within the tradition that the church has always been. It's not new.
Right. Well, Gene used to do that. The one thing we have in common is that we come up and receive communion together.
Mm-hmm.
He was so good at that. And then when the whole thing came up about the gay bishop, he said, well, the Episcopal Church has always been inclusive. And so people who didn't agree with that felt like there was no place for their point of view.
Yeah.
Which was really too bad.
Yeah.
Because there was a real good example of something that some people just weren't ready for.
Yeah.
There was a time when I wasn't ready for it. I can understand it. But I've changed.
Well, there was a news story this morning on NPR to the effect that in nationwide polling, right at around 50% favor gay marriage.
Wonderful.
And it's risen up to that. And for the last, an analyst was saying that for the last 10 years, the Republican Party has tried to make itself the party of smaller government and government off people's backs, but also social conservatism and making people do right. And it hasn't really worked out. And the fact that the country is stepping up and saying, no, gays should be able to get married and go in the military, means that the Republicans are pretty much dropping that as a big part of their
or they're very forced to.
Except in Montana. Did you read about that?
No.
The Montana Republican Party has passed its own little platform which insists that all homosexuality must be illegal. And most of the country doesn't care what Montana Republicans think, but it does make all the Republicans look a little bit more like intolerant hayseeds.
Well, the Republicans in Virginia are somewhat intolerant hayseeds.
Well, yeah, but they're in a minority, and they're in a shrinking minority. Even in Lynchburg.
We have a governor, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
And an attorney general who's a great embarrassment.
Yeah. But, I mean, yeah, I don't care for McDonald or what's his face either.
He commuted a couple of people who were on death row. I have this friend who follows that.
Mm-hmm.
But this woman, I think she was executed, or she's being executed today.
Yeah, it's Thursday. Thursday this week, they're going to execute the first woman.
Yeah.
And that seems wrong to me. And she didn't even actually kill anybody. She's supposed to have...
They said she was the spearhead. She was the head of the serpent.
Either she manipulated these guys to kill her husband and child, or something, or they manipulated her to make her think that she was manipulating them to kill him.
Jack says she has an IQ of about 75.
Right. Well, there you go.
And how can she have masterminded something and planned it?
Well,
Doesn't have the capacity for that.
it's the kind of thing that may well boomerang on the Republicans, because it's real close to the line. You know, was she the one where one test said she had an IQ of 81 and the other one said it was 79 and the cutoff was 80 and they went with the higher test rather than the lower test so that
I
they
don't
could
know.
burn
It
her?
could have been.
That might have been somebody in Texas. I don't know. It bothers me to think of us to live in a state that is sort of mentioned alongside Texas as sort of the, you know,
The capital
the
punishment.
capital punishment capital, and the we're not gonna lighten up on those drug people capital, and you know, it's just what are they trying to prove? You know,
Well, what's his name? Who was the governor?
Kane.
No, before him. Allen. He had a noose hanging in his office.
Yeah, what a fun guy.
Oh.
That's he was a bright shining star, and he went down so fast. He said he called somebody a macaca, and that was it for him.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah, it spread on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that
It's
was
the kind of
pretty,
thing that most people wouldn't even know about.
Well, this is the new time.
It is a new time. You can't go and say this to your little group over here and then say something different over here and have nobody notice.
Well, this is
And that's good.
the second draft of my paper. I go into transparency in more detail as a value, and what good it does, and how it's inevitable. How even if we don't make everything transparent, an awful lot about us is going to be known.
Right.
And so maybe making everything transparent where nobody has any secrets at all may be the safest place we can go. It would be a whole different type of society.
I don't know. I just keep remembering the Soviet Union back when I was in high school. And
Yeah.
how they didn't have any secrets.
Well,
And so people did have secrets, but they were terrified.
yeah.
I mean, I mean, with the wrong leadership, that can really be frightening.
Well, there was also the terror the horror story about the Soviet Union that I was always hearing was that they were getting kids to report on their parents for being political dissidents. But in the war on terrorism, there was a whole movement to question kids about what their parents are doing and try to get kids to turn in their parents for being, you know, terrorists or pot smokers or whatever else. I mean, that whole DARE program in the school, putting cops in the school all the time to sort of eyeball the kids as they're coming and going, that all struck me as well, frankly, Stalinist. But everybody's, you know, accepts it now, and it's just normal to have officer friendly in the school, and you know, he gets $40,000 a year to stand there and watch everybody walk in, and a teacher makes $20,000 a year to actually teach anybody anything. I mean, well, that's school for you.
I never thought about it that way. But that's many times you've said things that I'd never thought about that way. So that's pretty normal.
Well,
I have a friend who's a DARE officer, and I have friends who are teachers.
well, yeah, it's a different perspective, but you know, you also have a friend who was on the other side of the law, and so it's a different perspective on things.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, there's a new TV show called Outlaw, And Jimmy Smith, I think that's his name. Is that the right name for the first name and last name? He's a black actor.
I don't know.
And he's got some real gravitas. I've seen him play the president and stuff.
Really? Jimmy Smith?
Smith,
Smith?
I think is his name. But I might have the
New one
wrong
on
first
me.
name.
I don't know a Smith.
Anyway, he was on the Supreme Court, and one day this case came up that was a death penalty case. And he read through it and realized that the guy had had a lousy lawyer. And so he ruled, as the Supreme, to give him a new trial. And then he resigned from the Supreme Court and became the guy's lawyer. And he's going to go around the country taking these cases.
I guess it was more than a 5-4 choice, huh? I guess he agreed with whoever was president at the time, huh?
So anyway, yeah, he got all kinds of heat. But anyway, that's the new show.
That's neat.
I think it is, because the whole criminal justice system is just wrong.
Yeah, it doesn't work properly. That's
No,
for sure.
there's a new group where they're trying to get enough money to buy stock in companies that run prisons and give it to ex-cons for them to go and represent themselves at stockholders meetings and say, we're this new group and we're for prison reform and we want to work with you, and but we want to reform from the inside out. And when they first started, the companies were, oh, we're so glad to have you. And then the more they've let themselves be known for who they are, we don't want to.
Yeah.
Why are they calling me from the thrift shop? Hello? Yes. Hi, Ed. Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sure. Bye-bye. Woman needed $30 to get to Winchester. I mean, she needed $30 worth of gas to get to Winchester. We're approving it after the fact because somebody took it out of pocket. But yes, they can be reimbursed with thrift shop money for.
Good.
Yep.
Good. That is good.
So there are a lot of good things going on in the world along with all the bad things.
Yeah, I think that's always the case.
And usually the good things aren't as noticeable as the bad things. The bad things get all the publicity.
That's true. I get all the press. Of course, various attempts to report the good news have not panned out so well. What I notice is an awful lot of news. I mean, maybe it's because my focus is more macro and political and academic and economical, but when I go to the Mexican restaurant and watch the headline news, it seems to be all about some guy who killed a sheriff's daughter in North Carolina and escaped to Michigan, or there's a missing child, or this lady.
What station is this?
Headline News. It's like an offshoot of CNN.
The CNN's headline? Is there that crime focused?
Yeah, and
I stopped watching it. I used to watch it all the time, and I don't watch it anymore.
I think CNN headline is different from HLN. I think this is kind of a cheesy imitation CNN, but
I know. I think that's what it's become.
But I've met people that's their idea. That's what they're focused on. That's what they're completely wrapped up in, is the non-local crime news.
They can talk about it all day long.
Exactly. The one nut.
And apparently somebody got murdered on Main Street, Lynchburg.
That's true, and that is a big thing. That is what I was told was that guy was visiting here for his daughter's going to school or something like that. He doesn't live here. He just never been here. He just was visiting here. He was just some random guy who happened to be here. And that these teenage kids who were black, it was a black guy that told me the story, is how I heard it. The way I heard it, they were trying to impress their girlfriends or so it wasn't even like a gang initiation. It was just, young dudes who wanted to do something to be badasses, and they killed him. They beat him to death right there on the street. And it freaked out a lot of people because it was assumed that kind of thing doesn't happen around here.
Right.
And I kind of heard the story, and I got the feeling that this is a black businessman in Amherst, and I got the feeling that he was kind of having to give the opening salvo on this to everybody he met, basically, so they didn't tell him about it. And I kind of got the sense I was being probed for what kind of response I would give. And I kind of thought about it for a minute, and I said, well, one thing I think is that as I get older, one good thing is that the older I get, the less likely I am to do something really stupid trying to impress a woman. And he laughed, and I laughed. And,
right.
Because what else am I going to say? I mean, yeah, that's a shame. It's not good to just get killed randomly because you happen to be in Lynchburg.
Well, you want to do a background story and find out if any of them know how to read?
No, I don't guess anybody did that.
I guess so. But I know Doug said that he was just surprised at how many people came to him to ask for help in filling out a form or writing. So they could write well enough to write to their girlfriends.
Right.
But if they had something important to do, they came to him.
Bless his heart. Glad they had somebody to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish that sort of people's pride, that they weren't building a jail in Madison Heights. Instead, they were building a better school, for example. But, there is that mentality that,
Yeah, well, my new friend Jack was telling me that there's only one prison in Virginia that's privately run, and that's in Lawrenceville or someplace.
Uh-huh.
And of all of them, that's the one with the lowest, worst health care. It's the one with the worst this and that, worst nutrition.
I could ask Greg. I can't remember if he was at Lawrenceville or not. It rings a bell. He might have spent some time there. What he said is at the beginning of his time of being inside, which would have been around 98, 99, and before then, the inmates in effect ran the prisons. That wherever you had a prison, you had, these longtime inmates that had, kind of risen to a level of running the place for all intents and purposes. What he said is at the beginning of his time of being inside, which would have been around 98, 99, and before then, the inmates in effect ran the prisons. That wherever you had a prison, you had, these longtime inmates that had, kind of risen to a level of running the place for all intents and purposes. And if you could get along with those people, you were okay, and if you couldn't, you might not be. But in the control sort of kept everybody inside, but what was going on inside was largely controlled by the prisoners. And that at some point, under Governor Allen, they said, no, that ain't happening. Apparently there was a food strike or something somewhere. They struck for better food and locked themselves in somewhere or something. And they were promised, yeah, we're gonna give you what you want. And when they relented, all the people were shipped off to separate other facilities and put in solitary, so they could never do anything like that again. And what had been promised was not delivered. And from that point on, anybody who looked like they might be a prison leader was moved somewhere else and put in solitary, or they would shuffle them from place to place like every 2 weeks, so nobody was anywhere long enough to develop any kind of leadership. And they cut way back on their being allowed to talk to one another. So it was way more of you were alone and in silence the whole time you were in jail. And the Republicans were all really glad about that, because it was the same time that they were ending parole too. So it was this real big smackdown on anybody bad enough to be in jail. And it's funny how you can always get Virginians to turn out and vote for being meaner to somebody they've already got down. And to me that reveals the dark side of the mentality of people who are not lawbreakers. And
The sermon here was like that. Was about that last week. Well, everybody's going to be good, but are you going to be warm about it, or are you going to be cold about it?
All right. Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me of who I saw in the elevator coming up here earlier. Vance's sister, Beverly. What's her last name?
She's not Beverly. What is her name?
Mrs. Beverly, maybe. I want to call her Beverly. She doesn't have the same last name, but the one who owns the Lord Jeffrey's apartments.
Right. She was here?
Yeah. She was in the elevator.
How about that? Maybe she was visiting.
Yeah, she was with some older gentleman, and they were coming to the third floor as well. I didn't recognize him. I recognized her, but I didn't let on that I did. I think she recognized me too, I think, but didn't let on that she did. So.
Yeah, her name escapes me right now, but Beverly doesn't ring anything.
Okay, but yeah, it was something with a B. I worked on computers for her a few times.
Yeah, I know. I used to go to church with her. I know her.
Yeah.
Having a lapse, which is not unusual. But if it comes to me, I'll tell you.
But yeah, I honestly believe that if drugs were decriminalized and if the focus of education were made to really, really, really for sure make certain that everybody knew how to read and how to use the computer, how to understand graphs and their electric bill and their checking account, we'd be way ahead of where we are now. And that it could be done with a lot less time in school. And it's always bothered me that even when fuel was $3 a gallon, a bus went by my house twice in the morning, a bus went by my house twice in the evening to pick up the 2 kids out at the far end of the county and drag them to those awful schools where they don't learn. And that the fuel for that where they don't learn, and that the fuel for that bus was a given. That no matter how much it cost, the county was going to pay that. If they had to fire the art teacher, they would, but they'd put some fuel in that bus. Because why? The all-important babysitting function of the public school, you got to get those kids out of their parents' hair so they can go to work. Is that why we bus kids across the county? Like, I think that having an internet connection and doing one's work on the internet makes as much sense as being on that bus. You know, I know that's something.
So who's going to provide supervision?
I think that substantial supervision could be done through the wire.
You're talking about a huge change in culture.
Are we?
Well, it depends on the age of the kid.
Depends on the age of the kid, and it depends on. But a lot of these kids are basically spending a lot of time networking with other kids on their little machines anyway, and not really interacting with the parents or the teachers or whoever is supposed to be
Right,
there.
depending upon the age, sure.
You know, and given that they're there, you know, if a kid sort of disappears from the network, you know, how much trouble is it to know that that has happened and inform some responsible party and have them, you know, call up the house and see what's going on. And if somebody has to be, now, yeah, out there in western Amherst County, it may be tricky to get somebody up to that house in the case of an emergency, but it's not impossible. And in lots of places, it's not that big a deal. You could have sort of one neighborhood mom who was committed to address whatever kind of specific problems popped up, and she might run around putting out fires. You know, there's lots of ways to do it. Or there could be
People might have to get to know their neighbors.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I just don't see that the old model is really working, and I think it was designed in the time of factories when, you know, when it made sense, when you take your raw material and you apply the treatment to it, and then you test it to see if it has taken, and the ones where it hasn't taken, you throw them back in the first box, and then you apply the treatment to them, and you test to see if the treatment has taken, and
You know,
if
we're
it has,
recording more of you than we are of me,
Whatever.
which is
Well,
fine.
you know, you move it up the line.
Yeah.
Whereas now how people work is much more these networks,
Yes, that's true.
and I think that maybe that's how people should learn as well.
There's more of that in schools now,
Yeah.
cooperative stuff. Well, I'm going to excuse myself for a minute, and
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Yeah. You can... Hold on. Okay. Tell me again what you remember from school in the early 50s.
Right, I was in the first grade in 1950, and we used pencils, and we had the big paper, and then we were learning how to write in cursive. I was in a private school, and they had learned how to print in kindergarten, so I was learning cursive in first grade, and there was a hole in the desk for the ink bottle. But we didn't use ink because we weren't third graders yet, but third graders had ink.
Wow.
And ballpoint pens that sucked up the ink. That's this little lever on the side. And then I remember they came out with these cartridges of ink that would fit inside a pen. And they were very popular with students because they kept the ink off your hands. But this whole thing of a ballpoint pen is just a real new invention, relatively speaking. And back then there weren't all those plastic things. Toys were made out of wood or metal. And were more simple, I guess, less doodads on them. dolls were just dolls. They didn't talk or wet or any of the fancy things they've learned to do now. They, if they were fancy at all, they would open and close their eyes. And that was a big deal. That's kind of what comes to mind. I didn't like school, so I guess that shows.
What didn't you like about school?
Well, I was younger than everybody, and nobody wanted to be my friend. And people would, say things about me and point at me and stuff like that that made me feel real uncomfortable. And I guess that covers it.
Had your parents skipped you a grade?
Yes, they forced me to do that. My father wanted me to hurry up and grow up. And so that was part of that. Which I really regret that. I wish I had gone to school with my right age group. I think I would have had a better social experience all the way along. And I think I would have done better academically.
I've read recently that the best predictor of success in school is where you are in the age cohort. That the kids who are the oldest kids in first grade and the oldest kids in second grade and the oldest kids in third grade just get used to being a little bit ahead of everybody, and they end up staying ahead of everybody through life. And those of us that were the youngest kid in a class, even if we were somewhat precocious, we're always sort of trying to catch up developmentally through those years.
That was me.
Sort of end up permanently in that kind of a role. Which made me think of the way they did it at Friends, where they had a 2-year age cohort, so that everybody had a year of being, the younger half of the class, and then a year of being the older half of the class when the last year's older kids moved on. And it would be alternating all the way through school if you stayed in that kind of a school system, which would get around the whole problem.
Make people more balanced.
It would indeed.
Because I think, ideally we should be able to lead and we should be able to follow.
Right.
But yes, some people need to lead or they just can't function, and some people are followers and get nervous if they have to lead. So
I had a much easier time going back to college at 27 than I did trying to go at 18 and 19. I had a much better sense of what I was there to do, as opposed to just, okay.
Oh, my experience of going to graduate school when I was 50 was, I guess I graduated when I was 50, so I was in my 40s. But it was an entirely different, just entirely different. I mean, I was going because I wanted to learn something that I was going to use. I was being prepared for a career. Whereas, I don't know what I was doing. When I was younger, I was taking the courses I was interested in.
Were you maybe just doing what was expected of you?
Well, I didn't have any desire to do anything else.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, my mother said, I'm paying for it, and I don't care if you flunk out, I just want you to have fun. And so I was sort of free to do well, and I made all A's for some reason, and yeah, I mean, it was a good experience. But what I was programmed to do was to get married. Because that's what girls did.
Did your mother also go to college?
Yes. She went to Oberlin for 3 years and dropped out, and she went to the University of Hawaii eventually, but she never graduated. She did go to Katie Gibbs for secretarial school in Chicago and lived in Chicago when Al Capone was there. And so she was a competent secretary. It was a 2-year thing. And when she was in Hawaii, and when the Japanese attacked, all of a sudden there was a Navy presence there that hadn't been there before. And she was the only one on the islands that knew how to run use the equipment. She knew how to mimeograph and whatever else they had that was the newest thing. And so she went to work.
Wow.
Secretary to the admiral or whatever, because she could do the stuff.
Did the previous generation go to college, the women?
I don't know. I think my grandmother, she went to Vanderbilt, but I don't know if she just it was like a finishing school, because they certainly went to finishing school.
Okay.
Where they learned to recite poetry and do really interesting handwork with thread and needle, and manners, and probably how to plan a dinner party and what you needed to run a household. But and then on the other side, I don't think my mother's mother went to college, but her stepmother did. Her stepmother went to Wisconsin, and she was a Kappa Kappa Gamma. And in later life, she had been a house mother for her sorority on campus. And but my great-grandmother, she had something because she was a teacher.
Your great-grandmother was a teacher?
She was, yes.
What kind of dates do you have on her?
I don't know, it's in the Lindsay book. But she...
Is this your mother or father's grandmother?
My mother's grandmother.
So your mother was born...
That house we visited that had the hole in the wall in Wisconsin?
Right.
Yeah, that's where they lived. And she was a teacher. And she stayed at the family farm as a place to live while she was the local teacher. And that's where she met her future husband.
So you're talking... She was teaching in like the 1870s then?
Probably.
Wow.
And, but then an epidemic came through, I think it was typhus, I don't know. But anyway, 3 really young children of hers died within a period of about 2 weeks. And so after that, when she had more children, which my grandfather was one of them, she did not work outside the home. And she was very careful, probably overprotective. And I think that's where he sort of learned to be sneaky, because kids that are very well supervised have a way of doing that.
Mm-hmm. But in light of that,
he's trying to sell me something.
But in light of knowing what you must know about the psychological impact of watching several of your children die in a short period,
I mean, I just can't imagine.
You can't stop. I hear people say things like, oh, people today have to deal with stresses that nobody in the past ever had to deal with, and it's no wonder that so many young people are psychologically disturbed because they just have to see so much, and the world has just gone crazy. But if you watch 3 of your kids die from, was it 2 or 3?
Three
Three.
little ones, I think.
I mean, what would that do to you? And what did that do to everybody that had to live in a time when that sort of thing
Well,
was
people
happening?
were more grounded. I had that thought when watching the war in Afghanistan start. I mean, those people had to continue to function because they lived so close to the land. They had to be able to start a fire in the morning so that their lentils or whatever could simmer all day, along with their grain, whatever grain they had. They had to be able to do all those things. And that helped them survive the losses. Whereas people in America today are not grounded. In the same way, they're not.
We've done away with the daily rituals of survival, huh?
Exactly. And I think that's part of the anxiety. The people, so that it seems so much worse, even though, for what? You've got too many choices, you've overscheduled yourself, But a lot of that is the idea in our culture that to be important, you have to be super busy.
Yeah.